Welcome to the webinar on how to increase your enrollment, hosted by Chalk. My name is Shinjanine. I work here at Chalk, and Chalk is a planning and analytics platform that enables schools to develop a cohesive, standards-aligned map for curriculum and instruction. A little bit more about our agenda today. We're excited to share with you, what we've learned with working with hundreds of leaders from private institutions. So instead of just focusing on, examples of successful schools and their approaches to increasing enrollment, we're going to share with you their 3 strategies, and we're also going to focus on defining a little bit more about goals around increasing enrollment and how to set that up if you haven't done so. If you have any questions throughout the conversation, please enter them in the chat below, and hopefully we can get to as many as possible. This is a 25-minute webinar, so that you are aware of the time period. If we might run over a minute or two, just depending on how many questions we might have. So let's dive in. We know enrollment is important to you, and probably coming into the school year of 2019-2020, you're probably working on certain initiatives to increase your enrollment. Um, Maybe the reason that you're working on this is you didn't get a lot of students in the past years, or maybe you did, or maybe some initiatives, have been kind of stalled. And you're here today to learn how to do a little bit better, and that's what you want to accomplish. And this is exactly the type of information we're going to be providing you, because at Chalk, we know it's hard, not knowing especially, what to do and where to start. Because we've worked with hundreds of private school leaders, they often tell us the same thing. So we've kind of compiled all our learnings, and we're going to share with you that from strategies from schools like Tall Pine Schools, Gilmore Academy, Diocese of Pensacola, Bishop Kenny, and several more. A big area when you're looking at increasing enrollment is actually, okay, where are we starting? Where do I begin? You're probably having these conversations with your team about these new ideas that you might have or they might have on how to increase your enrollment. But instead of actually just talking about ideas, what schools need to do is define their goals, and identify what is that numerical value and that goal for growth look like. At the end of the day, how much do you want to increase your enrollment by? Is there an actual number? Maybe you've come into this webinar knowing that, hey, yes, next year I want a 5% increase in my enrollment, or some of you might not have that sort of numerical value down. Now, this next part actually can help you create a very tangible numerical value. And I'm going to walk you through these data sets, or what you see up on the screen here. Um, Depending on what data you have available to you as your institution, you're probably using, a learning management system or a student information system that could help you compile some of this information. So the first bracket we kind of really want to focus on is the amount of new students that you've had in the past 3 to 5 years. Now, depending if you have that sort of information handy to you, you can actually look at certain trends of, hey, I had an increase in new students, I had a decrease, and kind of like understand exactly what is happening in that sort of space and create strategies around that. Another area that you could look at potentially and focus your strategies and your attention on is the student retention rate. It's important to not only bring in new students, but also to retain students that are staying every year to year, and students that are not graduating. Let's take those students out of the question there, because it's important to make sure that students are actually enjoying and learning in your environment and are finding success, and retaining that is just as important. Another focus or data set that you can break down is actually your graduation rate. I know within private institutions, our graduation rates are quite high. So this is probably something that you already look at and are focusing in on. The last one I want to touch upon, because it's often not understood well, it's the demographic of geographic area. And what I mean by this is that, let's say you have a lot of students that are coming from certain types of families, whether they're low income families, middle income, high income families. Being able to break that percentage down and identify exactly how many students follow in certain groups is going to be important for you, especially in the way that you start targeting and focusing on some of the strategies we're going to talk about. Um, Another area is depending on where your school is situated. Let's say you're in the Northeast corridor and you have a lot of students that are coming, to your school from the south side or maybe even 20, 30 miles far out, depending on exactly, how far your institution is. This is going to be a great way for you to understand, okay, what is the trend I'm looking at? What is happening? Can I focus my energy more towards this? And you're going to be able to find a little bit more success there. So we're going to take an example of this institution, Tall Pine School, which is a K to 8 institution. And what they did is that they took one of the data sets we just talked about, and they created strategies and tactics around that. So what they did is they took a look at their new students that were enrolling every year for the past 4 years. And as you can see, there's a sort of a gradual increase until 2018. And then suddenly in 2019, there is a spike. It's almost doubled. Now, what I could tell you is that in 2018, these are the two strategies that we're going to break down further, that Top Hines focused on, which was on their brand, and the second one being their academics. Now we're going to break down a little bit more about what that means. So what do I mean by brand? It's beyond just having logo or a website that's kind of just sitting there for anyone to look at. It goes way beyond that. And this is where Top Hines understood exactly that they need to focus on creating tactics and strategies that are going to show what makes their school remarkable. Now, we're going to walk through what they focused on and showing, especially because the idea is that schools need to be able to differentiate themselves, especially towards parents, so that they could see the value that you provide to their child. Now, the value immediately, that first thing that you should be thinking about is about creating an environment where students are successful and parents are able to see that progress. So the first tactic or the tactic that I think is the most important in terms of creating your brand and engaging is storytelling. It's about the stories that you're showcasing to the greater world. What stories are you telling about your school? Are you able to talk about the extracurriculars, your school's history, the teachers who are teaching at your schools? Are you able to encompass students into these stories and their successes? What about the successful alumni, right? These are examples of certain stories that you can focus and tell on your platforms, because storytelling has this ability to capture parents and students in such different ways, and putting that sort of content out there is going to be beneficial for you as an institution. Now, the first medium that you can actually focus on creating your stories and storytelling on is, of course, social media. We know social media is not going to um, die off at any time soon. There's actually an increase of more registrations for Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, Instagram accounts, all these things. And that really kind of puts into perspective of, okay, does your school actually meet that sort of need and demand? Does your school have social media accounts? What about your teachers? And are they regularly active on these accounts? Then you have to kind of take a step back and see, okay, what sort of content am I putting out there? Do I have a blog? Am I sending out updates? What am I sharing that's beneficial not to only me as a teacher, to the school, but also to the parents and the students? So I'm going to show you an example. This is a quick little snippet of Tall Pines blog. all they have is a quick blog where they talk about special events and their certain events that are happening. So as you can see that they took their students from grade 4 to 6 to a camp. It took three short updates, maybe maximum of 3 to 4 minutes to curate all this information. Um, Talking about, okay, the buses have arrived at this camp. Hey, we're seeing that the students are really enjoying their time. Check out those photos on our Facebook and Instagram pages. And then also engaging parents on, hey, the buses are arriving at 4 p.m. Please be ready to pick up your students and your kids. These are such small ways to engage with the larger community, but they add so much more value immediately, both to the students and the parents, because they can capture individuals at different times. And especially if you have ability to share on Facebook and Instagram some of those pages, of course, one recommendation is to make those pages private or get a consent form that is signed by all your students, because that sort of information can be sensitive. So just make sure that you are aware of some of those regulations and laws that are set up. Another area actually, what you can use for your storytelling is actually your website. Now, this is just a quick example of a website that tells you, okay, what does my school look like currently? What sort of information do I have available on it? And am I able to share helpful content that is can be used by the principals, by the teachers, by the parents, and the students? So areas of communicating what programs I have, communicating exactly the blog that I just showed you, communicating exactly, what exactly your students are learning, and what your teachers are teaching. Areas like that and utilizing storytelling on this medium can really help kind of make that impact and create your overall brand. This is just a quick example of certain events that were aligned, so that parents could have a quick look and be like, hey, I know this is what is happening in the next 6 months. I have a better understanding of what events I can attend or make. And that just is quite easy communication. Now, these are some of the areas that Tall Pines focused on, and especially created that brand that spoke true to their school and got the parents' attentions. And at the end of the day, I want you to take away this area from this first strategy is that telling stories about your school on your website and social media should be your main online strategy that you should be using, because most individuals are using Google to find your school and are looking for those key differentiators. Now, another area that Tall Pines actually focused on is standing out from the competition. Now, what do I mean by this? Um, Schools need to take a look at their communities and be able to differentiate themselves from other schools in that space. If you have some time, like Tall Pines did, they actually researched nearby schools to see what they made them different. And they did this compare and contrast chart. And they listed out all these areas that their school did differently compared to another school. So take a look at this particular image here. Roots Academy is a school 5 miles from Tall Pines. And I love that this is a very Christmas themed sort of slide. But to get away from that, Roots Academy had similar programs like Tall Pines. They had the STEM programs, which was similar. But what each school did differently is that Roots had Chinese classes, music program, and a mindfulness program, while Tall Pines focused on Japanese classes, a sports program, and an arts program. Now, these two schools are doing something very different but similar in certain ways. And depending on parents, they're going to attract very different people to their institutions, and they're going to attract very different students that actually want to learn some of those things. And I think that's the key area that you need to identify. Hey, my school does this differently. This is what I will focus on sharing. It's not about really adding new courses or new programs, especially if you don't have those resources to do so. So what I recommend to you is actually focus on listing out all your programs that you do have available, If you have the ability to do a compare and contrast, please go ahead. But if you don't, just focus on highlighting certain programs and storytelling about those programs on your mediums of social media and website. And that's really going to help you kind of already get that first step towards the right direction of increasing your enrollment. Another area, actually, what Top Hines did is that they looked at how many students were staying at the end of the year and how many students were leaving. Now, what they did is they sent out this feedback survey. This is the first time they did it back in 2018 at the end of the year. And they sent it out to all the students that were graduating and leaving and their parents. And they asked, hey, can you give us some feedback and some idea of why you're leaving? What feedback would you give for our teachers, for our environment, for our school itself, for our programs? Where can we improve? And that itself was a big step on their end because they were looking at taking this information and wanting to improve upon it. And that changed the way that they actually approached certain programs and how they highlighted certain stories. And because of that, I actually do recommend that as a great tactic because then prospective parents and students can better understand about the culture of your school and how you're trying to make it a more um, engaging environment. I love this quote, being a positive school culture is quite a beautiful experience for not only just the teachers, but also for the kids and the teachers. And it's really about where teachers are doing more. And we know teachers have limited time. So we want to make sure that they can get as much done as possible. Now, the second strategy actually that Top Hines focused on was their academics, and they actually had their teachers involved in this particular area. And it wasn't just an the admin team focusing on this, but it was the entire faculty that focused on this. And what Top Hines knew is that they had certain programs that they needed to shine on, but instead of changing those programs and adding new things, they wanted to highlight it. And the first thing that they did is that they curriculum mapped. Now, you might be wondering, okay, how does curriculum mapping help with shining my programs? Well, what they did is that they used this technology, chalk, but they highlighted their curriculum map that was able to showcase immediately to your parents. And that was very important in differentiating them from other private schools because parents knew exactly what the students were learning immediately, every single subject, every single area, because that helped kind of create a environment of transparency and open communication. Now, we all know we want the best education for our kids, and we need institutions that are open and focused on sharing what is being taught within the school environment. And after working with several hundreds of institutions, they're always telling us that this curriculum mapping piece has been such an integral part of their success in showing, and not only showing the parents, but also aligning the teachers themselves and making sure that they are teaching year after year things that are taught well, especially, and engaging certain standards. So this is just a quick, photo of a curriculum map. And this is where I want to ask you actually, is curriculum mapping something you're doing currently? Are you even looking at your curriculum? And are you able to share your curriculum with your parents within your institution? Are you able to have candid conversations of what's being taught grade after grade, what standards are being covered, and how your students are learning certain areas? If we take this is sort of the big plan, let's focus another segment of curriculum mapping, which is lesson planning, that is very important to not only your teachers, but also to the parents, because this is another example of exactly what's being taught to my child daily. What are they learning? How can they improve on certain areas? How is this aligned to the homework that they're getting? Things like that. we know that, the idea of lesson planning, it isn't new, but the way that it can be done to make it more efficient so that your teachers can focus more time on the students is going to be just as impactful. So a big area, we want to focus our attention on is the transparency of utilizing an online lesson planner, so that you can share those lessons. Now, this could be really done anywhere. You could share lessons through email, through your Google Drive, whatever works best for your institution. But I want to focus on that big thing because being able to prepare and showcase um, what's being taught on a daily basis is going to help create a stronger relationship within the school, with the students, and with the parents. And it's also going to help aid teachers and helping them prepare and save time on their end so that they could give additional attention and time to the students that need that help, right? Being able to do certain areas like this is going to focus and drive a lot of retention within your school. So these were the first two strategies of brand and academics that Top Hines had focused on. Now, the third strategy I want to kind of introduce to you is the idea of innovation. This is such a big idea, such a big concept. Let's break it down. When I'm thinking and talking about innovation, the thing you want to focus on is utilizing technology within your schools. Now, that makes it a lot more simpler, but still quite complex, of what really utilizing technology means, what type of technologies, what can I do. But instead of me talking to you about this further, let's watch a quick video of an institution that focuses on utilizing technology to be innovative. So that was a great way to kind of just summarize the importance of technology. So let's look at an example of Gilmore Academy. Now, they are a private school in the States, and they had a very difficult time differentiating and distinguishing themselves from other schools in their area. And they wanted to kind of take the first approach of being more innovative and technology driven to attract students and give them opportunities that they couldn't find somewhere else. Now, what they found is that um, Gilmore Academy had a lot of tactics and strategies that they needed to employ. And because they focused on just the technology piece of it, they were able to kind of first find the issues that they had currently within technology at their institution. So that they were finding is that they had a lot of outdated softwares and tools that teachers, administrators, even students, they didn't like to use. They had some old LMSs and SIS systems, assessment grade books that just weren't user-friendly, weren't able to communicate the information that they'd like to. They had a very difficult time tracking, updating their efforts, and that made their school less efficient and took way more time away than they needed to. And then they also found that they had issues around their curriculum mapping, which was actually stored on a technology platform before they switched to chalk. And this reflection really helped them understand, okay, what is the direction I can go towards? And so these were the changes that Gilmore Academy made. They found out, okay, because I had all these outdated programs and information, they actually added an online course on robotics and computer programming. Now, if you don't have the ability to add again new programs, please do not do so. This was something that worked for them, so it had more impact on their end. But if this is not something you can do, I definitely do not recommend that be another area that you look at. They updated their technologies as well. So they added technologies like Chalk to be more innovative and transparent around curriculum mapping and lesson planning. They added new games to engage students. They added some math games and things like that. Prodigy is a big math game that's big out of Canada that's being utilized in so many different environments. So they did a lot of focus and drill down of certain technologies that they could add that were cost friendly and effective to improve and highlight their innovative environment. And because of the results of that, they made those changes back in 2017, and they didn't have many new students attending or adding on to their institution. But once they made these changes, within 2 years they saw a spike of over 100 students wanting to attend their institution. Now, depending on, they're not that big of a school itself already. So going from like adding 2 new students per year to 100 in 2 years was a big jump for them. And these were the three strategies that I wanted to kind of recap. So we talked about these goals and creating tactics and strategies around looking at these data sets. Now, we covered the first strategy was around brand, and that was utilizing storytelling on social media and on website, and focusing on identifying who you are within your community and how you differentiate yourselves versus other schools. We use the example of Tall Pines and differentiating themselves within their academics, with their curriculum and lesson planning. And then we just touched upon the third strategy of being more innovative and technology driven. And we learned about Gilmore Academy that did that. So I hope that you got a lot out of this, quick presentation. If you do have any questions, I would love to answer some for you right now. If not, I think this would be the end of our journey here. I will send this recording out to you and your team members, so you could share that. Any questions that you might have later after this presentation, please feel free to email schools@chalk.com. So it's just schools@chalk, CHALK.com. And hopefully we could answer some of the questions that you might have and send you some more case studies or some more information that you're wanting to learn about. But I see there's no questions, so I'll just end it off here with a quick thank you, and I appreciate your time.